Could you imagine being cryo-frozen in 2023, and 1 century later you come out of your cryo chamber nap hoping to experience Cyberpunk 2077 in real life with spaceships, people with augmented limbs, but then you take your first step and you're into a decrepit wasteland. The year is now 2135, and we play as a US Marine called Nicholas Rain, who wakes up from a cryo chamber that was buried deep underground. He was a part of a government experiment called ARC, which was meant to safeguard a small portion of humanity in the event of an apocalyptic catastrophe. So we meet Dan Hagar, who heard the vessel emerging from the ground and was exploring the outside. And I don't know about you, but there's always just a sense of security in John Goodman's voice whenever he speaks.
Well, I guess you don't know anything about any of this. Welcome to the future.
I love every movie he's been in, except The Big Lebowski. That movie sucked. So we get to his settlement base, which is just an old gas station, and we basically do a bunch of tasks for him. Dan tells me that as much as he would like to keep me around his base, because I'm an ARC survivor from the past, I attract way too much attention to their base, so he wants me out. And the settlement mechanic tells me that he can build me a car, but first I need to find car parts in a British bandit camp. This part's kind of funny just because all the good guy characters that you meet have an American accent, and all the bad guys have British accents, which is kind of funny and base at the same time.
Do you see what they're working on downstairs? Oh, fuck yeah! Big fucking turrets on the car!
And it's weird because they all look like those Fallout New Vegas raiders, but with the Union Jack design onto their bodies. Once we find our last car part, we get our first boss fight of the game, where he comes at us in a car and starts shooting from a turret on top of it. And it wasn't too difficult just because he was a stationary target, and while his machine gun was cooling off, I just shot him a couple times and he died. We get back to the settlement and the mechanic makes me a custom buggy for me to traverse the wasteland with. As I'm driving into the wasteland, I finally find a town called Wellsprings, and I get to speak to Mayor Clayton from the town. And I'm not gonna lie, the city is very nice. You've got running water, you got a bar, you have the nicest NPC in the game called Mick, who's the town's mechanic.
Remember, if you run out of ammo for the guns on your buggy, you can always buy more from both Coffee and Supplies and Rusty by the racetracks.
And best of all, you can participate in the city's favorite sport, which is buggy racing. But before I get to do that and race the locals, I first need to get sponsored. So we drive our sponsorless buggy to a man called J.K. Styles, and he has a game show called Mutant Bash, and he tells us that if we win his game show, he'll sponsor us. And his game show makes me think of the Saints Row's Professor Genki's game show, just because you have to kill a bunch of mutants over 5 different levels while a live crowd cheers you on, which is kind of fun. So in classic fashion, you win the game show, get sponsored, win the race against the other residents of Wellsprings, and once I do that, I get to upgrade my buggy with guns. Then the sheriff of Wellsprings asked me to do a favor for him, and he asked me to eliminate an enemy faction full of bandits that are making explosive RCXDs from Black Ops 1. I get to the factory, use their own RCXDs against them, and blow up their whole base of operations. And also, I gotta say that the enemy NPCs were fun to listen to, and they felt very real because they kept whining about their work conditions, which was pretty hilarious.
Man, I haven't had a break all week. This is bullshit. I'll tell you what's bullshit. Making us work right next to all these goddamn explosives.
And as we're trying to leave the area, we get our second boss fight of the game against a super mutant monster. You basically take a rocket launcher, dodge all of his attacks, and you shoot at his exposed brain. And after doing that a couple of times, we defeat the boss, and once we go back to Wellsprings, there's a problem with the water system in the city. The hydro engineer tells you that some bandits have infiltrated the hydro pumps, and I need to go in there and eliminate them. And I'm not gonna lie, it's a fun level with a lot of verticality, and the mutants were really difficult to fight against, which, I don't know, it made it fun. And once we kill all of them, we go to the town's bar to take the edge off, and I get excited because I spot a blackjack table with a dealer. But I get immediately disappointed because this is what the future of gambling looks like.
No deck? I can sell you a starter deck. Won't be the best damn deck, but at least you'll learn the game and start to figure out that you'll need to find some better.
Shut the fuck up, man. I just want to play some poker. We're playing Magic the Gathering? Come on. So I flirt with a woman at the bar, and it turns out that she's a part of a faction called the Resistance. And she asked me to liberate a prisoner from a federal prison, and because I'm a simp and I have absolutely no game, I say yes. I fight my way through some prison guards that look exactly like the Half-Life 2 Metro cops, but with a red uniform, and I finally find the prisoner. Turns out that the prisoner is called Captain Marshall, and he's the leader of the resistance group the girl I like is a part of. He thanks me for rescuing him and basically forces me to join the resistance group against the government. And he flies me out to the resistance main base, which is in another city called Subway Town. This is where Captain Marshall tells me that the mutants that we keep fighting against during the campaign aren't due to radiation like the ones that we see in Fallout. Because in the Rage universe, there were never any nuclear explosions. Humanity fell apart because of a huge meteor strike. And funny enough, the mutants were created through experiments by the government. And all of their failed experiments were discarded by the government into the wasteland. And they're the ones that we've been fighting against the whole campaign. And Captain Marshall tells us that he wants me to go into the main government building called Capital Prime. And he wants me to free all the ARC terminals that the government has kept trapped underground so that we can use those soldiers like myself to fight against the government. And after fighting my way through a horde of mutants and authority soldiers, I finally get to send a signal through their massive satellite. And then it goes to cutscenes where all of the ARC vessels buried underground resurface, and then the game ends, making you wonder what's gonna happen next. Yeah, that's basically it. I don't really know. I thought that the story was a bit too convoluted for my taste. Even though it was published by Bethesda, it felt like a watered-down version of Fallout New Vegas without skill points and a linear storyline. But that's not to mention that the world building is very good, the weapons I used were satisfying to use, the voice acting was good, and I thought that the enemies were a little bit too spongy, and the texture rendering was weird because the textures didn't really load in, and also they were kind of static. I don't know how to explain it. I'll show proof. And it's not just my PC, everyone's been experiencing it. If you made it this far into the video, I really want to thank you very much for watching. Last weekend, TwitchCon Vegas was happening. I was supposed to go, but something happened in my family that prevented me from going. And it sucks because every time I go on Twitter, I keep seeing a bunch of pictures of all my online friends, and I'm supposed to be right there. And yeah, I can't. So hopefully next TwitchCon I'll be able to go. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next week with another video. All right.